You know this story. A bunch of little kids make fun of Elisha because he's bald. Elisha gets mad, curses them, and God sends 2 bears out of the woods to maul 42 children. Lovely. And somehow this has become one of the Bible stories everybody knows, including people who don't read the Bible. Bring up the Old Testament in the wrong comment section, and eventually somebody's going to ask you about the bald prophet and the bears. So let's talk about the bears. Welcome to She's So Scripture, where we take the text seriously, take ourselves a little less seriously, and let Scripture form us instead of just inform us. I'm Diane, and I'm glad you're here, so let's get started. Okay, this story is disturbing, and I'm not going to try to convince you it's not. But the version many of us have in our heads has a few things in it that the text never actually tells us. Elisha is traveling to Bethel when a crowd comes out of the city and starts mocking him. "Go up, Baldy! Go up, Baldy!" Elisha turns around, sees them, and curses them in the name of Adonai. Then 2 bears come out of the woods and maul 42 of them. And that's basically everything 2 Kings gives us. And already I want to clear up one thing. Elisha doesn't summon the bears. I feel like I said that like the Chicago Bears. The bears. Elisha doesn't summon the bears. He doesn't say, "Bears, come forth." He curses the crowd in the name of Adonai. The bears show up afterward. So now let's deal with little children. The King James calls them little children. Other translations give us small boys, young lads, young boys. The TLV that I use says young boys. The Hebrew is yeladim qetanim. And Hebrew is about to make this considerably less neat and clean. Na'ar can refer to a child or a youth. It can also be used for someone old enough to have real responsibilities in life. Joseph is called a na'ar at 17, already running Potiphar's household. David is called one when he's old enough to face Goliath and get handed Saul's armor. The word is used for servants and attendants. It's used for armor bearers. It can even be used for priests, which matters in a minute. So na'ar doesn't automatically hand us a 5-year-old. The second word, qetan, does mean small or young. And I need to tell you about a mistake I almost made here, because this is what happens when you get really excited about a Hebrew word and your argument starts running faster than your evidence. It's like I put my argument and my evidence on a track and shot off the starting gun, and one considerably outran the other, and that was the argument. I found the exact expression, na'ar qetan, in 1 Kings 11, describing Hadad the Edomite. Hadad eventually becomes a grown man with political connections who causes Solomon all kinds of agita. I thought, there it is. Except there it wasn't. Hadad is called na'ar qetan when he flees to Egypt. The marriage and the political trouble come later. The stories moved forward in time by then. We have this time travel going on. So Hadad doesn't prove na'ar qetan can describe an adult in that scene. I wanted him to. He declined to cooperate. This is why you check your own arguments. Solomon, though, is much more useful. In 1 Kings 3:7, Solomon has already become king when he says to God, "I am na'ar qetan." And then he proceeds to ask for wisdom. In Hebrew, it's actually an understanding heart. So same expression, the way he's putting it is almost like, I'm still new. I still have a lot to learn. Give me wisdom. Solomon's on the throne. He's exercising royal authority. He's already married. So whatever he means by calling himself na'ar qetan, and I think it's humility, He isn't telling God that he's a little boy. So when 2 Kings calls the crowd yeladim qetanim, the phrase itself doesn't settle their ages. And I'm going to disappoint both sides of this argument now. I've seen defenses of this passage go from these may not have been little children all the way to this was a violent gang of 42 grown men threatening Elisha. Where did we get the weapons? Where did we get the threats? Where did we get 42 grown men? The text doesn't give us any of that. Verse 24 actually uses another word for the same group, yeladim, ordinary Hebrew word for children or youths, yeladim. So I can't use the Hebrew to turn them into toddlers, and I can't use it to turn them into a biker gang either. We're somewhere in the range of children, adolescents, young men, and the text just doesn't give us enough to pin it down closer than that. I know, we all would like a cleaner answer. We just don't have one. There's another detail that usually gets lost in the retelling. The Hebrew phrase, mehem arba'im ushanei yeladim, from among them 42 of the youths. Mehem is from them. That means the crowd itself may have been bigger than 42. 42 is the number mauled, not necessarily the number who came out of Bethel. So I want to say that again for clarity. The phrase is mehem arba'im ushanei yeladim, from among them 42 of the youths. So it seems like it's saying from among a greater number, 42 of them were mauled. I hope that makes sense. And Bethel is really where I want to spend some time, because if all you remember about Bethel is Jacob sleeping with a rock for a pillow and waking up saying, surely Adonai is in this place, you're remembering Genesis. We're in Kings now, and Bethel has history. After Solomon dies, the kingdom divides. Jeroboam becomes king of the northern kingdom, and he has a problem. Actually, he has a lot of problems, but anyway, here's the one problem. His people are still traveling south to Jerusalem to worship for the festivals. Jerusalem is in Judah. Jeroboam does not love this arrangement. So he sets up worship centers at Dan and Bethel and places a golden calf at each one. And then he says, here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. See, he was afraid that if the people went to Jerusalem, they might be swayed to stay. So this is why he tries to keep them at Dan and Bethel. So that phrase, here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. If it sounds familiar to you, it should. Aaron says essentially the same thing in Exodus 32 when he makes the golden calf. Of all the lines in Israel's history to recycle, Jeroboam went with that one. Interestingly enough, he also appoints priests who aren't Levites, and he sets up his own festival on a date, I think it was a month after the festival, so that he kind of mimicked what was going on in Jerusalem. So by the time Elisha walks toward Bethel, this isn't just the sweet little town where Jacob once had a dream. Bethel is one of the major worship centers Jeroboam built as an alternative to Jerusalem. Now put Elisha back on the road. Elijah's just been taken up in a whirlwind. Elisha has the mantle now. He's starting his own prophetic ministry, and he's walking toward Bethel when this crowd comes out and mocks him. Go up, Baldy. At the very least, go up works as a taunt because Elisha is literally going up toward Bethel. But there may be more happening. Some interpreters hear a little bit of an echo of Elijah's departure in those words. Go up. Your master went up. Why don't you? Can you not do the same thing? Are you not as good as Elijah? And I think that's possible. And I do find it persuasive. But I wouldn't build the whole interpretation on it because the text doesn't stop and explain the joke to us. But either way, this is happening in Bethel, and that matters. I've also seen people say that these were priests from Bethel coming out to confront Elisha. Maybe. The text doesn't say that. It doesn't tell us they're armed. It doesn't tell us they're planning to kill him. It doesn't give us enough to turn this crowd into whatever kind of villains would make the bears easier for us to accept. What it does give us is a crowd coming out of Bethel to publicly mock the prophet of God in a kingdom where the fight over worship, covenant loyalty, and prophetic authority is everywhere. This whole scene comes right after Elijah's confrontation with the prophets of Baal. That's one chapter back, Mount Carmel. Bethel is basically the building version of that same fight. So, no, I don't think we're reading about Elisha getting his feelings hurt because somebody made a bald joke. The scene is bigger than that. And now we get to the part that I would rather not clean up. 2 bears come out of the woods and maul 42 people. That's brutal. I can tell you that they weren't necessarily little children. I can tell you why Bethel matters. I can show you where this episode sits in the larger story that Kings is telling. I can point out Elisha doesn't command the bears to attack. But I still have 42 people mauled by bears. Context doesn't make that go away. There's one more thing that I think we need to be careful about. The Hebrew verb for what the bears do is baka, which can mean to split or tear something open. It's a violent language. But the text doesn't actually say all 42 died. Maybe some did. Maybe many did. We're not told. We're told they're mauled. That's it. And we're not told what Elisha was thinking when he pronounced the curse. There's no internal monologue. We get 3 verses. That's it. And I don't want to fill those 3 verses with details that aren't there just because those details would make the story easier to defend. The Bible doesn't need me to manufacture evidence on its behalf. So where do I end up? Well, the story still bothers me. I think it's supposed to have some teeth to it, literally, apparently. But the Sunday school version, Elisha gets teased by 42 little children for being bald and has them killed by bears, has taken some things the text leaves uncertain and turned them into facts. The ages aren't certain. The crowd may have been larger than 42. The text says 42 were mauled. It doesn't say 42 were killed. And Bethel is hardly incidental. This happens at the start of Elisha's ministry in one of the northern kingdom's great centers of rival worship, when the prophet of God is publicly mocked by a crowd coming out of that city. You may still finish the story uncomfortable. I do. But at least let's be uncomfortable with the story that 2 Kings actually tells us. The bears are bad enough. We really don't need to add anything else to them. I want to thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I truly appreciate your support. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platform. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review and share the show with someone you know. Your feedback and your recommendations help us grow and reach more people with insights and teachings from a biblical perspective. Stay blessed, friends, and see you next time.